Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of Brand Shelter's keynote webinar series entitled .au Domains Are Coming, All You Need to Know Now. My name is Andy Churley. I'm the Head of Marketing for Brand Shelter, and I'm delighted to be your host for this presentation. In April 2021, Auda, the administrator for the AU domain space, introduced a new set of licensing rules aimed at streamlining more than 30 policies and designed to promote greater trust and confidence in the AU namespace. Continuing development of .au from 24th of March 2022, as a part of this AU Direct initiative, a greater choice of Australian domain names for websites and email addresses will be available for individuals, businesses, and organizations, providing shorter, eye-catching domain names which are easy to remember. In this 40-minute keynote, we'll be discussing the key features of the changes to the .au namespace and the potential benefits that these changes might bring to holders of existing .au domain names and also new registrants. Before we kick off the presentation, there are a few items of housekeeping. Firstly, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window, which you'll find in the bottom right of your webinar window, and our speakers will respond to them at the end of the presentation if we have sufficient time. After the presentation, we'll send a link to all participants so that you can view the presentation again and indeed forward it to your colleagues. I'd like to introduce you to your presenters today. Firstly, Leon Cavanagh. He's the Business Development Manager in Australia and New Zealand. Leon is Brand Shelter's BDM and has been helping large corporations manage their digital portfolios and drive awareness of brand protection. Leon has more than 4 years working in the domain industry with Centralnic and helps customers shape their digital strategy for the future. Also joining us is Tom Webb, the Group Product Manager for Brand Shelter. Tom joined Centralnic after being Head of Product for the big corporate domain name registrars NetNames and CSC Global. He has a track record in shaping large, complex digital strategies for market-leading products and services. Tom has more than 14 years' experience as a Senior Product Manager and extensive experience in the domain names, brand protection, DNS and security services. Without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to your first presenter, Leon. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Andy. And welcome to everyone joining us today for the release of the direct.au domain space. It's an exciting time. And we're looking forward to going through what's changing and what the opportunities are for all customers. So let's kick it off. What is changing with the direct.au? So as of March the 24th this year, the direct.au namespace becomes available for registration. So what that means is brand new second level .au domains are going to be available to the general public on a first come, first served basis. So as long as the second level domain name that you want to register is not registered in the third level domain name space, so one of the previous .com.aus and org, net, ID and ASN, if they are not already registered, you'll be able to register your second level domain straight away from the 24th of March. So for business owners, if you've missed out on registering your unique third level domain name in the past because of some reason and that's already been taken, this is your opportunity to actually register something more unique to your business. So for example, if John Smith's Consulting obviously missed the opportunity to register smithconsulting.com.au, they now have the opportunity to register financialadvice.au. What other changes do we have? So you may be asking about priority status and third level existing domains. So existing owners of third level domains will be able to apply for a priority status for registering the exact match of a second level direct.au. We'll talk a little bit more about priority status and allocation a little bit later on the further slides. It's good to know that there's going to be no changes to any existing domains in the third level domain space. So that's business as usual. If you've got services and websites, emails running off your third level domains, nothing will change there. So it's safe to say business as usual. This change also will bring Australia in line with the other top level domains like UK, .us and NZ. They've been a huge success for brand owners in that area, and Australia has come along with them. You'll be happy to know that Outer has relaxed some of the restrictions for registering .aus. We all know that sometimes it's been quite tricky matching up your domain name with business certificates and your ASIC registrations. So Outer has really relaxed these requirements slightly. So the requirements are a little similar. So you have to have an Australian presence or a business registered here in Australia, or an Australian citizen or permanent resident. You'll no longer have to match your business certificate to the domain you're registering. So this gives you the opportunity, if you always wanted a bit of a short and snappy domain name for your business, this is your opportunity to pick that up. With the restrictions, or less restrictions, I should say, you can simply just register a name of your choice, subject to the Outer licensing rules, and of course a priority allocation process, which we'll touch on later. So existing registrants of third level domain names will have priority allocation on securing their matching direct.au namespace. So what that means, this priority allocation will hold your namespace from general release for up to 6 months. So that means no one can go out and register that if you already own the .com.au, .net.au, org.au. Now, if it's two separate registrants, separate individuals with the same namespace of that third level domain name, then it's decided from the point of the registration of the initial third level domain name. Tom will talk a little bit more detail about that on a few other slides. Now, what opportunities does this raise for business owners and brand owners? Of course, it brings a shorter and more memorable domain space. So instead of registering a long domain name, professionalbrokers.com.au, you can now register probrokers.au, for example. Something all brand owners should be thinking of is securing your brand and your IP. What we don't want to see is brand owners missing out and having to pay later. So if you don't already own a third level domain of your brand or namespace in the .com.au, .net.au, this is your time to be able to register that to gain priority allocation for the same name in .au. So what we don't want to see, if you don't register the third or second level domain name and you think that this may not be of interest to your business at this point in time, you may find that this domain name or namespace might be up for sale at a later date. And that's a scenario no brand owner would like to be in. That can be a costly and lengthy exercise to go through. Potentially what may be worse if you miss out on registering your direct namespace in .au, you may not even get a chance to actually register that. The initial registration period for the release is 1 year, but following that 1 year period, obviously the domain names can be registered up for 10-year period, locking up the domain that you may not get a chance to own. This also brings a stronger Australian identity and ownership for your brand and business. You know, it will be recognized globally and showing that you're active in Australia. Now, I'd like to hand over to Tom, who's going to talk about how they'll be able to register a .au and talk through that priority allocation.
Thanks, Leon. Yes, so as Leon has mentioned, I'm going to take you through some of the ways that the allocation process will work. And before I get into that, we've mentioned a number of terms, and I'm sure most of you are aware of how domain names work, but I just want to do a bit of clarity on some of the terminology that I'm going to be using as I go through this. And you never know, you might learn something about domain names. So here we have a typical construction of a domain name, brandshelter.com.au. The thing about domain names is you actually read them from the right to the left. So on the far right hand side of a domain name, in the green here, is what we call a top level domain. You're probably all quite aware of those. The big ones are .com, there's .au, there's AU, there's UK. They're typically country code names or they're generics. And there are around, I don't know, 1,800 of these available for registration. So when we talk about top level domains, we're talking about the far right part of the domain name. Moving one left, you've got the second level, which is second from the right. Second level domain names are actually where most domain names are usually registered. So this is very common, for example, in the .com registry. But what we're talking about here is .au is going to be opening up their second level. So when I talk about second level domains, I'm talking about immediately to the left of the TLD. And then third level domains, well, obviously it's the third part from the right. So this is where traditionally you've been registering in the AU namespace, so brandshelter.com.au, but other TLDs had this mechanism as well. So another famous one is the co.uk in the UK. And so for some registries, they only allowed you to register in the third level. So I want to take you through the process of how you go about reserving your way into the second level for .au. And as Leon has mentioned, the key thing to know is if you already have a registration in the third level, you are going to get the ability to take priority in getting registrations at the second level. So one of two things will happen. If you have a desired registration, for example, in here we have brandshelter.au, one of two things will happen. It will either be brand new, i.e. no one has registered that name before in any of the third levels in any of the AU namespace. So if you look on the left-hand side here, if you did a availability check on com.au, net.au, org for all of those for your string, and it comes back all as available, then that name is likely to be available in the .au, and you'll be able to register that from the 24th of March 2022. If what you're trying to register has already been registered in the third level by someone else or yourself, so maybe brandshelter.com.au or org.au were registered, then those names will not be released at the second level on the 24th of March. They will go into this priority allocation process. So you can find out whether a name is going to do that by checking the availability of names in your namespace. There are some pretty important dates. If you like to take screenshots of webinars, this is quite a good one to take a screenshot of. I will talk about what the importance of February the 4th, 2018 is in a minute. The two main dates you've got to remember are March the 24th, 2022 and September the 20th. So on March the 24th, that is when the .au will become generally available. So that's when you'll be able to register new strings in the .au. At that point, the reserved names, i.e. any of the names for anyone who's registered at the third level, will go into this priority allocation period. During that period of time, you can make a priority application, i.e. state your intention that you would like to have a .au with a string you've already registered at the third level. That lasts for 6 months. If you don't make a priority application in that period, then the names will become free on September the 20th. After that, there's a conflict resolution period. And again, when I explain a bit more about the priority application process, that will make a bit more sense. So let's go into the allocation process and priority. So like I've said, if you have an existing name, so for example, brandshelter.com.au and you want to register the same thing in the second level, for example, brandshelter.au, you must make a priority application in that period to reserve your right to try and do that. If you don't do that, you may not be able to get that name. It may go out and be registered by itself. So if you own the third level, you must make a priority application, and you must make that priority application before the 20th of September this year. If on the 20th of September there is only one application for a priority applicant, they will immediately get the .au registration. If no applications are received in that period for the string, then it will go into general availability on the 20th of September. So if you have, the key takeaway from this is, if you have something at the third level that you want to register at the second level, you definitely need to make a priority application. I'm going to explain what that February the 4th date was. So when you make a priority application, you will be assigned a priority category. I'm using the word priority a lot. I realize that. Hopefully you can keep it in your mind what I'm talking about. So when you make your priority application, your application will be given a category of either category 1 or category 2, depending on the registration date of your name. So in this example, if I registered brandshelter.com.au before the 4th of February 2018, I will go into what is called priority category 1. If I registered it after the 4th of February 2018, I will go into priority category 2. Now, this is done as part of the mechanism for deciding who will get the domain names as a result of the allocation period. You can probably guess that priority category 1 is better than being a priority category 2. So I'm going to give you some examples of what might happen in the priority application process. So as a first example, let's say there are multiple applicants. Now, there can be multiple applicants for a name. It could be yourself. So you might actually be competing with yourself. But there will be some names that there will be different registrant owners for different reasons that own third level domains. So for example, I might own a name for brandshelter.com.au and someone else might own brandshelter.org.au. If we both make a priority application, then we will be in a multiple priority applicant situation. And this example is, if I have a single priority 1, so someone who registered at the third level before the 4th of February 2018, and I'm up against someone who registered their name after the 4th of February 2018, then I, as the priority category 1 registrant, will win. So if you're the only registrant before that date and you're going up against category 2s, you will get the allocation of the .au name. If there are multiple priority 1 applicants, so let's say the same situation, there are different people who have rights to the second level name, but they are all priority 1. Everyone registered before the 4th of February 2018. Then no allocation actually takes place. What will need to happen is those registrants will need to negotiate with each other as to who should get the .au. Now, to do that, you will need to contact each other via the WHOIS information, and Alda will facilitate a way for you to end that negotiation and indicate what the outcome was. They're saying that that will be done by the people who don't want it withdrawing their priority applications, and the person with the priority application left will be the one allocated it. But it's key to understand that the name will not become available on the 20th of September if it is a situation where there are multiple priority 1 applications. The name is reserved indefinitely until that resolution comes to pass. The final situation would be if there are multiple priority 2 applicants. So if the only people who have made a priority application have names that were registered after the 4th of February 2018, then the way that the allocation will work for those situations will be the person who had the registration earliest will win. So the person who has the registration closest to the 4th of February 2018. And the others will lose out. This is all, as I said, again, on the basis that there are multiple applicants for the same string and they have rights to make that priority application. So back to that timeline again. So that cutoff date is important because knowing that will tell you whether you're priority category 1 or priority category 2. And then on the commencement date for any contested strings, they will go into this allocation process. And on the 20th of September, that's when the allocation process ends and the relevant allocations will be made. And then if there are multiple people with priority category 1 and they haven't resolved the differences, the names will continue indefinitely in the conflict resolution period until the registrants can come to an agreement of who gets the name. Now that could be quite a complicated thing. I hope I've explained it in a way that you can understand, but obviously at Brand Shelter we can help you with this process. We can help you understand which priority category you would fall into and help you improve your probability of success by recommending which name upon you should apply for your priority access, as well as obviously helping you make that priority application. We can do that on your behalf. It's also worth noting that there could be a situation where you are the only one who can, you might own all of the variations of your string across the 3rd level TLDs. So in that situation, we can also advise you and help you make a priority application that will be allocated faster. So what do you need to know for registering? So you need to get yourself ready for this process. Now, the first thing which is really important is to make sure that all your registrant data is up to date and aligned on your .com.aus, .org.aus, on your existing Australian domain names. There are a few reasons for this. Firstly, if you want to participate in the priority application process, you will be contacted via your WHOIS information. So you need to know that you can be contacted on the email address associated to your domain name. So it's important that you go and check that you're able to receive messages over that and that all of that information is up to date and correct. Secondly, there is a situation if you are the only registrant with rights over the namespace, so you've registered, say, in com.au and org.au, if the registrant information matches, Alda will consider that as one person. So in those situations, your name might be allocated quicker because they'll see that it's all the same person, so I can just allocate to that person straight away. Secondly, you might want to queue jump this. So if there is a string that you would like to get in the 2nd level in the .au, you could make a 3rd level registration prior to the 24th of March so that you can make a priority application in the priority application period. That might increase your chances of success of getting your .au on the basis that you meet the eligibility requirements at the 3rd level. So for example, if we didn't own the brandshelter.com.au, we could make a registration now, and then we would be in a better position to make a priority application and increase our chances of getting the domain name at the when it becomes available. When it comes to submitting your priority rights application, of course, you have to meet the validation requirements of the .au. As Leon mentioned, the restrictions on the .au are less stringent compared to what they were on, for example, the com.au. So you can register pretty much any string. Australian presence is still required across the .au namespace. It's changed around a bit about how you do that. Typically you can produce things like your Australian ABN numbers and things like that. Or if you're a natural person, you can provide the information around that. In order to make a priority rights application, you will need a priority ID token. Your registrar will be given those to make those priority applications. So if you are one of our customers, we will know what your priority ID token is, and we can place that as part of your order, so you don't have to worry about any of that. If you're with a different registrar and you want us to make a priority rights application, we can do that as well. You would just need to go and obtain your priority ID token and provide it to us for us to do that. It's just worth noting, Alda haven't released the priority tokens yet, so if you go and ask for them right at this moment, you may not get them, but they're planning to get that released quite soon. And of course, we can take pre-orders for all of this, so we can take pre-orders for domain names that you would like to have at the third level where they may be uncontested, and we can also pre-order your priority applications as well. And you can do all of that via your account manager, which might be helpful because they can help advise you on the best strategies to make sure you're successful at the second level. Or if you really want to, you can do it by yourself through self-service on our brand shelter portal. Okay, thanks for listening to that. Hopefully that made sense. And I will hand back over to Andy as we go into our FAQ section.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Leon. We've had a few questions in. So I will basically throw these out to the presenters. Feel free to pick them up as you will. So this is not a particularly straightforward service as we've seen in the presentation. Tom, I think if you could you just briefly go over the validation service requirements again and explain how domain owners or potential registrants can go through the validation process?
Yes, so the validation processes were updated in April 21. And so there are a few tweaks around it. The key thing is, of course, the Australian presence. And Australian presence can be proved through a number of things by being a company or business entity registered in Australia, or being a natural person that lives in Australia. Those are the main requirements to be able to register in the .au. If you want to register in the other third level domains such as com.au, org.au, there are different eligibility requirements in those. For most of those, there are things like you need to make sure that your name aligns to the business, or you have a trademark, for example, in the com.au. So those validation requirements are all still required for registering in here. Now you can talk to us and we're happy to provide you links or explain to you what the validation requirements are to be able to make those registrations. And when it comes to priority applications, the key thing is that you already have a third level registered name.
Thanks, Tom. And regarding pre-orders, are all registrars offering pre-orders, or is it just a few of them, or do I have to go to Alda directly to run that process?
You can submit pre-orders early. Now for the .au, it's obviously goes into general availability on the 24th, so you won't be able to register before that date. But for example, some registrars like ourselves may take pre-orders, but not everyone is necessarily doing that. So yes, we are accepting pre-orders, and then when the date comes around, we will place those orders to give you the highest chance of winning that at the .au level. With the priority applications, there's a longer period of time because you have until the 20th of September 2022. So we can take pre-orders for that, but also you have plenty of time to put your orders in for that as well.
Okay, we've had another question in. Leon, maybe if I can ask you, how much does this process cost?
Yes, certainly. So the good news is for submitting in for a priority application is going to be the same cost as what it would be for a registration of a .com.au. So what you're paying now for a 1-year registration for .com.au is what you would pay for submitting a priority application. And all .au registrations will also reflect the same pricing.
And along the same vein, will I get a refund if my pre-order fails?
Great question. So priority applications are non-refundable. So you're paying to be part of that process. So if you're successful when the priority application for a 1 year, that prepayment of the priority application goes towards 1 year's registration. So if you're successful, the 1 year registration is applied and that domain is allocated. If you're unsuccessful and someone else is a priority one, that pre-allocation amount is not refundable, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks. And Tom, what happens if I already have a third level domain, but I don't apply for my second level .au name? What happens to that second level?
If you fail to apply for a priority allocation, it'll become generally available on the 20th of September 2022. So if you don't take action, it becomes available from that date. So if you do want to have it, then you should really make that priority application.
Okay, so if it goes back into the pool of available names, then it's registered on a first come, first served basis.
From the 20th of September 2022, yeah.
Okay, excellent. And then we've had another question in that says, my eligibility details on my third level domain are no longer valid. Do they need to be updated so that I can secure my second level .au domain?
Yes. So if you're a priority category 2, potentially not, but you should always have your contact information up to date, because it's important that the WHOIS information accurately reflects who you are and your details that you can get contacted on. Those are general licensing rules of the .au namespace. So if you know that your details are incorrect, then you should definitely get those updated. Whether or not this was coming, but especially if you want to take part in the priority application, because those details will be used as part of the contact mechanism by ALDA and by other registrants who might need to negotiate with you.
Okay. We've had another question in that says, please provide the list again of third level extensions that qualify you for the priority access.
It's any of them. So if you know you have a domain name that ends in .au, then that gives you access to the priority allocations. The common ones are obviously com.au, net.au, org.au, there's id.au, asm.au, but there are some others. There's gov.au, but I don't think those are open TLD registrations to most people. But if you know that you have something that ends in .au, you are able to participate in the process. If you want to do an availability check, we can provide you with the list. So just we can give you a list of all of them where you can go and check. There's also some priority checkers that you can also run that are provided by ALDA, so you can run those as well.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And then generic names were disallowed in the past, with the famous exception of news.com.au. Are there any reserved names that cannot be registered?
Yes. So there are some restrictions on reserved names for things that are abbreviations or restricted things under Australian law. I don't have a list of what those are. I'll give you an example, but there are some of those. You can't have any names that are like Australian territories or the word Australia within them. So those are reserved names. and anything that the Australian government might deem as being a security risk would be excluded as well. There isn't an easy way to understand what that list is, but there are some restricted names that seemingly will be in force. You'll be able to understand that because when doing an availability check, it'll come back to tell you whether it's available or not to make a registration.
Thanks, Tom. And then we've seen the relaxation of the registration requirements for the second level names. Are those relaxations also going to apply to third level names?
No. Unfortunately not. If anything, they've gone the other way and made the third level more restrictive. An example of that would be at the third level on com.au, they're being stricter on the application of trademarks. So previously you could have abbreviations or shortenings of your trademarks being valid at com.au, but they've changed the rules now that it has to be an exact match of your trademark. So it's actually gone slightly the other way in some cases. They have simplified their rules, so they have made some things like Australian presence a bit more clear about how you achieve that, and they've made some changes to make it easier to use subsidiaries of other companies. But in general, they've tightened up some of the rules around the others, whilst relaxing it at the .au level. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add there, Leon.
No, that's pretty straightforward for me. Just those relaxed rules are in place for the direct.au, and unfortunately, yeah, don't cross back over to the .com.au.
Thanks, guys. And then is the pre-application self-service available on the Brand Shelter portal today if I'm a Brand Shelter customer? So can I put in my pre-order today?
Yes, you can. So you can make a pre-order today. You can for both the priority application and for the .au namespace. I would suggest you talk with your account manager because they'll help you through that process. But if you want to self-serve it, you can self-serve it today. There are some things that haven't been released by Alda yet. So, for example, the priority tokens. But we will pick those up in the orders and apply them retrospectively once they are available from Alda.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And we've had quite a few questions in, so I think we're coming to the end of them now, which is good because we're kind of running slightly over. But I'll try and clear these last few up. What happens if two different applications or competing applications cannot come to a resolution on who owns the domain name? Will it remain in reserved for the foreseeable future, or what mechanism is designed to force an outcome?
There is no forcing of an outcome. You will need to come to a resolution between those applicants. The most likely scenario is that you're probably arguing with yourself. Alda doesn't expect there to be much contention at priority category 1. It is essentially for the foreseeable future, as long as you maintain your interest in the name. So you will need to renew your priority application each year, and failure to renew your priority application if the other applicants continue may mean that you lose your registration. So when you make your first priority application, that will obviously last for a year, but you need to maintain that if you can't come to a resolution with the other WHOIS providers. So if you fail to continue that, there is a chance you could lose out.
Okay, that's great. And then we've had one question. I'll try and read this exactly. If I have registered both example.com.au and example.net.au, but somebody else has registered example.org.au at the same priority level, should I put in both of my priority applications, or just one of them?
Just one, but put it in for the one with the earliest registration date. So have a check what the registration date. It doesn't matter if it was transferred to you or you traded it from someone else. It's the original registration date. So that's why it's really key to understand that, and your account manager can help you through that, but to look at the creation dates and place the application on the earliest one. And it would also be important to make sure your registrant data is the same on those two names in that particular situation, so that the two names will be considered as the same registrant.
And last few questions. If there are two applications, both for the second level, but one negotiates with the other party to get the second level domain, does the registrant still have to wait until September to register that domain? And if not, how soon can it be registered?
On the assumption those two are the only ones with priority rights, so that assumption, if you withdraw your priority application, it will then allocate to the person with a priority right. Now, Alda is talking about creating a mechanism to be able to withdraw your application. So in that particular situation, if you did negotiate prior to the 20th, then and you were category 2s, one of you can withdraw their application, and that will cause the allocation to go to the other person. Indications are that will be done immediately at that point if there are no other people with rights to make a priority application. Obviously, if there was a third person who could make an application for it, it will be reserved until the 20th of September. Does that make sense?
I think it makes perfect sense. And then final question, is the cost of a .au registration to be similar to a com.au registration?
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So that's the end of the questions. Thank you both for your expertise and guidance on what is actually quite a complicated subject. Just before we close the session, I'll just make available a white paper that we've created. Guys, anyone on the presentation can download from the Files tab. Hopefully you can see that and make that available. If not, you'll be able to find it by contacting your account manager or probably going to the website. And if there is nothing else, then we're running a little bit over. So I'd like to thank you both, Leon and Tom, for your fantastic presentation. If any of the attendees have any further questions, you can come back to the presentation and submit your questions, and those will get routed through to you. And we will be sending out a recording of or a link to the recording of the presentation to all attendees, which you can forward on and share with your colleagues. Thank you very much. If there's nothing further, I'll close this session.
Thank you.
Thank you all.